Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Andrew Moran, Dave Patterson, Graham Noble, and John Clark. And this is The Conservative Five, an online TV news production of Liberty Nation News. Helene left not only a swath of destruction across the Southeast, but left a legacy of problems to contend with in an election year. How will the folks be able to cast a vote? Mail service will be sketchy, polling locations have been obliterated, and getting in and out of a few places remain accessible only by beasts or by foot. Another October surprise? How to get out the vote. Are we looking at a potential low voter turnout in Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina? John Clark, help us out here. In this election, after all the country has gone through, going to witness the Southeast fall out of swing state importance?
You know, like a hurricane, the election's not going to stop and wait. And we have seen that the states, particularly those hard impacted, are scrambling to try to make sure that everybody does have access. The flooding in particular has been really bad. It's interrupted communications, travel, etc. I believe North Carolina's mail-in ballots go out tomorrow. So this really is kind of an urgent response, but the states are saying that they're stepping it up and that they will be able to set up temporary polling stations, that some of states have some technologies that they say that will help them to the extent they can be applied. And of course, you know, the show must go on. So I think the whole nation is looking to that. But hopefully we still have a little more time and no more hurricanes before the election hurricane. And once again, the local people are stepping up. I don't think FEMA is going to install polling stations, but the states affected are certainly working very hard, and they say that they're going to be able to maintain the vast majority of the voting system.
Well, if somebody's sending out a ballot by mail, what if you don't even have a house anymore? Where do those conglomerate? Where are these people? What if they've been relocated out of state, temporarily?
Well, and then that depends on which states are doing, wholesale ballot mailing versus just absentee ballot mailing. And so that varies, I think, by state as well.
Dave, could this prolong voting for those in these areas? I mean, it'd be a good excuse to just go, well, let's hold off for a while.
Well, I don't know, basically if it would prolong the voting period in the areas hardest hit by the hurricane, particularly Helene. But it's going to make getting to the polls, as John said, a little bit harder, and obtaining absentee ballots more difficult. But retrieving the absentee ballots could be a challenge as well, and causing the counting to take longer. That's really what I think is going to be the problem, is getting the counts squared away and certified when the ballots are spread out all over the place, and it's very difficult to accumulate them. In North Carolina, for example, many of the election offices, the county election offices, which they've been destroyed or seriously damaged and are unusable in some form or fashion. And there's no doubt that, this general election is going to be a test for innovative election management, if you will, particularly in Georgia, Tennessee, and North Carolina, and Florida as well, in many respects, and because these states have early voting, but collecting the votes is going to be a challenge, And some of the ideas I think that John alluded to is mobile voting centers, in many cases brought in by helicopter, but even getting to the mobile voting facilities is going to be a real challenge for a lot of folks. And so I think that this cycle's voting is going to be an interesting one. But one of the advantages I might mention of having the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers involved is that they've been very diligent in getting their heavy equipment in and to clear roads and highways of debris, and so that people have some possibility of getting to a voting center or a place where they can get food. Probably that takes precedence. And so to your point, I think that it's going to be a challenge all the way around.
Is there any kind of precedence to rely on, Graham? I mean, don't we have something in place for this?
Well, given the amount of yelling that politicians do about how important it is to vote, and of course it's important for everybody to vote, but given the big brouhaha about let's save democracy, I think you would imagine that states, particularly states that are in, let's call it the hurricane zone, or even the states that are in the Midwestern states that have frequently hit by devastating tornadoes. You think that these states would all have mechanisms in place to deal with this in case it actually happens at election time. I think Florida is probably, in terms of getting people, getting the vote out and getting people to polling stations, I think Florida is probably going to is going to be the least adversely affected, because they just appear to be much more organized. I lived for a number of years in North Carolina, and I can tell you that it's not the best run or the best organized state at all, and particularly over in that western part of the state. Who knows? It's going to be interesting to see how this pans out. I'm just wondering if whichever of the two main candidates loses this election, if their opponent who beat them, whichever one it is, wins North Carolina. And let's face it, in most cases, the candidate who wins the presidential election did actually win North Carolina. But nevertheless, I think either of the candidates, if they lose, they're going to they're going to point to states like North Carolina, and they're going to say, my people didn't manage to get out to vote. I'm sure. So it's going to be, so once again, a natural disaster will be kind of politicized in a way. It's tragic. I feel for all of those people, but I think the states, as John said, I think the states will step up and do their level best to make sure everyone has access. Like I said, I think probably Florida will fare better in that respect than the other states, but I guess we'll have to see.
I guess we will. Okay, Andrew, you're giving me a side eye.
I'm just sitting here listening to all the great pieces from everybody.
I don't know. Well, maybe you were just winking at somebody. I don't know, but it looks like you need to talk.
It must be you in that blue sweater, Sarah. Anyway, so actually, it's funny to build on Graham's point. We can talk about election outcomes and how natural disasters impact them. There's been a lot of research looking at the results following these hurricanes, tornadoes, whatever the case. So, for example, one study by Cambridge, it discovered that the president's party is rewarded with an electoral victory if the government is determined to succeed in disaster relief based on polling numbers. So, in that case, what do some of the latest polling numbers show? So, they're mixed. So, let's go for one of them. One of them is a recent CBS News YouGov poll, and it showed that voters were split on how the Biden administration has handled hurricanes to date. But then there was another one. It's a Data for Progress survey, and it found that only 30% of likely voters thought the government provided the right amount of support to Americans for disaster relief. So these numbers should be interesting heading into the November election, and to see if it will weigh any at all. And maybe the exit polling data, maybe that will show us what voters thought of hurricane relief efforts in Florida, North Carolina, all these storm-affected states on election day.
No, we're all spitballing here. Liberty Nation News may not have all the answers yet, but we will, and we'll let you know what we find. Thanks for watching, and thanks, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform. YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble, we're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation News has its own Roku channel, where you can see all of our TV productions. Now, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. I'm your host, Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for joining us today for Free Thinking, Free Speech, LibertyNation.com.